I talked at the top of the program about the atrocity unfolding in Ukraine, how we all ought to shout about what Russia is doing, but how the weakness of the West has helped to embolden Vladimir Putin, and the time for more strength from the West was a decade or so ago. Now it's a diabolical dilemma. Now, Lorraine Finlay is Australia's Human Rights Commissioner. She's written about how all this matters for Australia today. Thanks for joining us, Lorraine. You've pointed out that the human rights of Ukrainians matter to Australia because these are the basic rights that we all should adhere to. I think all of Australia understands that. The big question is, what should we do about it? What can we do about it?
Well, thanks for having me on, Chris. And I think you're absolutely right. It's something that matters in and of itself because the human cost of war always matters. And those pictures that are coming through of innocent civilians in Ukraine are just heartbreaking. And I think the broader implications for Australia arise because of the fact that this is such a clear breach of international law in the United Nations Charter. It's such an unjustified, unprovoked act of aggression by Russia, and it really is a time when the world needs to unite and send a very clear message that firstly, this cannot be tolerated, and secondly, there has to be a really high cost imposed to demonstrate both to Russia and others that these types of actions cannot happen in the world today.
It also proves, doesn't it, that the only way to protect the international order is strong sovereign countries standing up with military might, because the UN is patently useless in this case because Russia is a permanent member of the UN Security Council with a veto power.
Well, if we get to a situation in the world, Chris, where might is right, then I think Australia's position in the world as a medium-sized nation becomes a lot more precarious. So
can I just interrupt there? But the rules, but as I said, the UN just can't help when Russia's involved or China's involved. They have a veto power. I'm not saying might is right. That's the opposite, because what Russia is doing now is imposing their might against the will of people. I'm saying right is right. That is, we have to be able to stand up for what's right. And what's right is the freedom of people behind their sovereign borders.
And I think this has been a stark wake-up call in terms of the need for the international community to unite behind those principles. And we saw that in the United Nations with the General Assembly resolution that passed, where 141 countries voted in favour of the resolution to deplore Russian aggression, to demand the withdrawal immediately of Russian military forces. But 5 countries voted against that resolution and 35 countries abstained, and that includes China. So I think it really highlights the strategic challenges that we're facing, which are very clearly being seen in Ukraine at the moment, but which have broader implications, because we seem to have this idea that human rights and democracy and freedom is part of the inevitable progress of the world. And in actual fact, that's not the case. We really have to remember that rights and freedoms need to be continuously defended, continuously justified, continuously renewed, to make sure that we actually live in a world where we do have that rules-based system and it isn't just might is right.